All right, welcome into the 4 floor, an extension to 5 on the floor. I waited that time. An extension to 5 on the floor here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. We've got Greg Sylvander. Follow him at Greg Sylvander. Brady Hawk. Follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Ricky J. Mark. Follow him at exactly that name. And our friend Sean Rochester. It's right there, S. Rochester NBA, if you forgot it. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Biscayne Bay Brewing. Make sure you check out the Twitter account. Somebody here may actually run that thing on occasion. Biscayne Bay Brewing, the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, also of the Miami Marlins. And yes, they have kiosks at the arena when the Heat return on Monday. If you want to have a beer with the Jokic brothers, do it over at the Biscayne Bay kiosk. It's at the 100 level, I believe outside of 121. And also at the 300 level, the Pastime Pilsner. Tropical Bay IPA is the most popular and is my favorite. Make sure you check out all the beers, though, of course. And, support local. They support us. You support them. We continue to produce content. So go to BiscayneBayBrewing.com and check out where you can find it. You can find it at Quarterdeck, which is another one of our sponsors. Also sponsored by our friend Mark Brown, MARCBrownPA.com. Build a better future. Sit down with them and do an estate plan, particularly if you are sort of young with a family. You want to make sure that you take care of your loved ones. Sit down with Mark. He'll do a great job with you. He'll explain everything to you. He also can help you with your closing if you have any kind of property that you're trying to sell. 954-566-5678. I can speak to this because I've worked with Mark on a few different things at this point. He's also a big Miami sports fan. He's probably going to pop up at one of our watch parties here soon. So say hello to Mark, MARCBrownPA.com. I wouldn't recommend him if I hadn't had good experiences with him. All right, let's get right to it. The Heat and the Bulls tonight. Tonight is the 20-game mark. I recommend that you also check out the story that Gad Cartagena wrote on the website. He broke down where the Heat is at 19 games right now. Of course, you can catch Brady's work there as well. He did it from a statistical perspective. We're actually going to have Brady and Gad on the pod tomorrow night to talk about where the Heat are at 20 games. But they're not there yet. Tonight is the 20th game. And guys, it's sort of weird to say this, but I kind of feel like fans' perception of the first 20 games is going to be guided in large part based on what happens tonight. Like, I know it's early for litmus tests, but Heat fans are in a little bit of a panic after every loss right now. I think they've sort of lost the big picture of what this schedule looked like before the season, and they're frustrated by games that the team should have won, okay? Like, you look at the game in Indiana, the 2 in L.A., the one against Minnesota, the Boston game, the Denver game, they weren't going to win those. But basically 5 out of the 7 games were winnable, and they didn't win them. And so I feel like tonight, against another good Eastern Conference team, is going to set the table for how fans feel about the first 20. 13-7 coming out of this, pretty damn good. 12-8, it's pretty close to 500. I know it's just one game, but I feel that way. But before we get to it, and I'll let Greg weigh in on that. Brady, who's in, who's out?
Yeah, the main one, the only one that just came up literally probably 10, 15 minutes ago was Tyler Hero was questionable. They said it's something about soreness, but it really wasn't that. It's just that he probably has like some sickness. They called it under the weather. So it seems like it's just going to be a judgment call up to Tyler tonight. Like, if he's good to go, he can play. They're going to go through the next hour and see how he is. If he does play, if he doesn't play, since we're talking about lineups, this is Max Strus, like, his return, because he's been out so many games. If he does play, we know what Eric Spoelstra does. Like this, he was just at DePaul with him, and he's in Chicago. Like, he's going to feel that type of energy that this is surrounding Max Strus this whole kind of weekend or this area, that he's going to play. If he doesn't play, Max Strus is going to plug right in there.
Who cares about Max Strus night, right? That's what Jimmy Butler said. Bad teammate.
I care.
Greg, 20 games in. How much of the way you feel about that? Pat Riley has set that guy. He always says that, 20 games. That's when you kind of know what kind of team you had. Talked about the schedule before the season, how challenging it was. We need to be up for this thing. I feel like he probably feels pretty good about where they're at. But I also feel like tonight matters.
Oh, it does. And I think that you're right that there is this weird thing about 13-7 versus 12-8 and what it feels like and how much closer to 500. And I don't know, that's just like psychological to some degree, but Heat fans emotionally are going to sway both ways. You know what I mean? So like, this game does matter, and it matters because of this too. I think everyone kind of is starting to recognize Chicago as being a team that's going to be in the running for one of those top 5 seeds in the East, so like, essentially this game is playing for much more than just just a regular matchup in November. It can end up being the difference between home court in the first round. These are really evenly matched teams statistically, but the one place Miami surprisingly has a real advantage, I think, tonight is going to be on the boards. Yep. Bam has a chance to redeem himself with 2 days rest. I'm hoping that the knee feels good.
Sean, it feels to me like this even though Chicago's material is much better than Minnesota's, that this is actually a more comfortable matchup for the Heat.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they do plays into our strengths. Like, they're a mid-range team. We defend the mid-range very well. The matchups across the board, their depth is not great. I think it's a game that plays into our strengths more so than like the athletic, long Minnesota team, young team that's going to get up and down. I think it's almost like the Spider-Man meme. I don't know where I stole that from, but like, we're kind of looking in the mirror at each other, both kind of over exceeding expectations. So I think it's a game where it's important for both sides. If we were doing a Bulls pregame, I think they'd be saying the same thing right now. It's a measuring stick game.
DeMar DeRozan, Ricky, has had an interesting narrative arc, I think. He's in Toronto, and he resurrects their whole program there, right? Like, Bosch leaves, it's DeRozan and Lowry together. But then DeRozan had to go to get Kawhi to win the championship. And then I feel like DeMar played really well the past 2 seasons, but kind of got buried in San Antonio, of all places, where not a lot of attention. His numbers are elite this year, and he's doing it in a way that other players in the modern era don't do it. What kind of problems does he present?
No, I think he presents the traditional "what if Jimmy Butler were your enemy tonight" problems. There was, as we talked about during free agency, for a lot of people that wanted him because he was a big name or a new toy they could look at, bad idea, because there would have been too much overlap between he and Jimmy. I think it's just a matter of making sure he doesn't get to those mid-range jumpers that he loves. He seems to love the elbow, from what I understand. It's like Paul Pierce in his prime in a weird way, the way he would get to those spots on the floor. I think what's different now for him is that he isn't necessarily the focal point. He joined a team that already had Zach LaVine, and then you've got other guys like Lonzo Ball and so on. And
Vucevic being back.
Yeah. So, I think being in Chicago is giving him a fresh start. He's able to play with purpose because, let's face it, once Kawhi left San Antonio, that Spurs team they were done. They were done. The dynasty was over. So I think at this point, it's just a matter of making sure he doesn't get to his spots. Don't let him get to the free throw line, because if he starts putting up free throws, then that, the repetitions will eventually make him a threat. But I think that's what it is for him. But I think Miami has other ways they can beat this Bulls team beyond just DeMar DeRozan.
Greg, you mentioned this. I'm going to throw it to Brady, but basically you mentioned there's a matchup that Bam should do certain things. Every time we say that, he doesn't. Right? Like, I mean, on paper, look, he's quicker than Vucevic. They've lost Patrick Williams and others on their front line. They're not particularly deep up there, Brady. But again, when we say that, he doesn't sustain it. Now, you did a whole breakdown about what happened in the game. I recommend people watch it. And maybe you want to repost that before the game just so people can see it. But he didn't look bothered by the knee early. No. But then he disappears late. So I don't know how much of this to attribute, again, to the same conversation we always have with him. Is it physical or is it mental/emotional?
Yeah, I think right now we're probably leaning towards physical, because you're looking at a guy that comes out the gate hot, and he's getting to the rim, and he's getting to the free throw line. Making the free throws are a completely different story, because this feels like a game where he tries to get to the line, just beat that mental aspect and try to get to the line, knock down a few early. But you try to just sustain it for 48 minutes, because I feel like we've seen it for quarters. We've seen it for these big halves and moments, but you have not seen it across the board. And as you said, this is a matchup you probably should win. The issue is that I keep continually saying, like, we can sit here and debate if he should be in the post against guards, or if he should try to face up more, take a jumper, or try to get to the line. Like, he just has to pick one. Like, at this point, it's like you have to have a home base where you can rely on, where it gets down to the fourth quarter and, Jimmy doesn't have it going at this point in the game, and the only guy you really can go to is Tyler. Like, you have to have Bam be able to go to one thing. If it's the jumper, good. If he can get to the rim against a slower Vucevic, that's also okay. So I just feel like these are the matchups you have to win. And if it's based on the matchup, good, but it feels like it just has to be, no matter what the night is, no matter what the matchup is, you just have to go to that one thing.
Now the matchups tonight, this comes in, Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan. Jimmy's going to guard one of them. Who is it, Greg? Levine?
Probably. DeMar's first in the league and made free throws, and I think Jimmy's third. So like this could end up being one of those games where we're watching a lot of free throw attempts, which
Yeah.
I think actually like Miami would be cool with that, honestly. But Levine is the more explosive of the two. I'm interested to see what they do with PJ though, because with Bam's knee and such, I'm just interested to see if maybe that he guards up more often. And just how that could shake out. Brady or Sean probably would have a better read on how that'll go schematically, but that's why I'm just not sold 100% that Jimmy starts on Levine.
Go
ahead, Brady.
I just wanted to say really quick that I just think that PJ is the ultimate DeRozan defender. Like if you think about matchup wise, like the way he can get to the post up in the mid range, get to his mid range spots. Like PJ, if you think back, I continually think of him guarding KD when KD was getting to the mid range in that playoff series. Like obviously he didn't stop him, but he slowed him down enough where he kind of bother him. That just feels like the way they can go, where he can at least bother DeRozan. The issue is that if he does get in foul trouble, they just have no other options.
This is a good point from Jermaine. Vuce is going to kill us if Bam continues to switch on guards. Sean, why is that happening? I mean, is this a decision that Bam is, because we got upset at the soft switches last year, and I thought that was going to stop. I mean, is this a decision that Bam is making, or is this schematic?
It seems more like a Bam decision sometimes lately. I'm not someone that's so dramatic about the switching. Like I think sometimes it makes sense against this team. Like Vooch is 6'10", but everybody else is 6'5", 6'6". So you worry about him, but everybody else, like, and I think that goes to Greg's point about PJ. Like there's going to be times where they're going to play Caruso at power forward, basically, or this Javonte Green guy, at power forward. So, I think the switching tonight can be hidden a little bit, but I do agree at times it's like, why are you switching that? And I think, it's something of pride that Bam, like, he switches more than anybody, but sometimes it's like, maybe let's dial it down a little bit.
You know what's so funny? Chicago needs a player that they got rid of. I like Thad Young would fit really well with this Bulls team. If he ever gets pried loose. But let's look at the context of the Eastern Conference here, Ricky. Again, I think we all expected Chicago to be improved. How could they not? They had DeRozan, they had Ball. They lost Thad Young, but again, they didn't. They lost the shooter. I'm sorry, Markkanen, who wasn't. Yeah, who it seemed like had maxed out at least in their system. Billy's a good coach. I think most people agree on that. How far he can take you is another question, but he puts together pretty good regular season teams. But I don't think most people had them in the top four, though. Right? Like, I mean, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, depending on Simmons, right? Maybe Atlanta, maybe Miami. But they do feel sustainable to me. And it feels like they're the type of team, they could add a buyout guy, or they could make a trade to bolster their front court where they become more compelling.
Yeah, I think they could. And I also think that they were in many ways my dark horse top 4, top 5 team in the East, considering what was happening out in Brooklyn and in Philly. With Chicago, I think, they absolutely can. They could very well be 1 or 2 buyout candidates away from really making the Bulls something to worry about heading into the playoffs. I think the problem with Chicago right now is that outside of those 4 starters, I'm not sure what you have. I know there's much love to Caruso and everything, but in many ways, he's an internet meme that plays really good defense and tries very hard. I mean, granted, when the Lakers did start him in Game 6 against Miami, when they really, when they finally put Miami to bed like they were supposed to 3 games earlier, he played well. But the thing is, I think they don't have much of a bench. Their power forward rotation is lacking. Long term, right now, they're great. It's great, but as injuries and wear and tear starts to pile up, as it does for every team, not just an aging Miami Heat team, I think that could potentially prove to be their downfall, causing them to settle for a 6th, 7th, or maybe even worst case scenario, 8th seed. So I think Chicago right now, it's just a matter of depth, their power forward rotation. And if they can stay healthy, cool. But if not, they could be a problem. I think that's where they're settling in.
Yeah, I'm with you on the depth in the front court. They have depth in the back court, I think, with Kobe White and Caruso, like you mentioned. But if you're going to be playing Caruso at 3 and 4 because you don't have any forwards, that is an issue going forward. As we transition before the picks, we want to mention PrizePicks.com use the code FIVE. But I think Greg and I are on the same page with this tonight. You can sign up with the code FIVE. I looked up the numbers. I guess I'm not entirely surprised about this. Jimmy Butler, by the way, is a better road player in his career than a home player. All of his numbers are better on the road. You know who his numbers are best against in the entire NBA? The Chicago Bulls. In the 7 games since he left, he's averaging 27 points and 8 rebounds against the Bulls. He's no higher than 21 points against any other team. That's the Lakers, and that's the only other team he averages 20 against, okay? He gets up for this, okay? This is not a Dwayne situation. Dwayne used to get tight in Chicago. If you remember, all of Dwayne's numbers would typically come down in Chicago, and he had that sort of awful series.
I think we know why now.
There were a lot of yes, okay. I'm not gonna get into that, but there were a lot of reasons. You're right. There were a lot of reasons. Some we didn't report at the time, but he did not play particularly well in Chicago historically, and even that 5-game series that they closed out with that furious rush between him and LeBron at the end of it. Look at Dwayne's numbers in that series. Seriously, they won that series in part because of Bosh. Dwayne's numbers in that series were not very good. So I'm expecting a big game from Jimmy tonight. But let's go around again. Use the code 5 at Prize Picks. Greg likes some over rebounds tonight. To me, this has to be a Jimmy game to a certain degree tonight. I'm tired of counting on Bam. We do this every night. It's like he should dominate this matchup, and then he doesn't. And now with the hero situation, even if he plays, if he's under the weather a little bit, they're going to need to slow the game down a little bit. I think Jimmy's got to get to the line, and Jimmy's got to assert himself. Brady's made the point. Jimmy doesn't typically have sort of 2 disappointing performances in a row. He was bad against Minnesota. No way around it. I would expect better tonight. Sean, what are you expecting?
You know, I think it's a must win. They had a game last night. We have 2 games off. We've been in Chicago longer than them. So I think the rest is going to help us. Hopefully Tyler plays. I think we get it done. I think, with the veteran team that we have, we rise to these games. So I would say, we pull it out late. It's going to be a tight game though.
Guts.
Greg?
Guts. I'll give you another prize pick. So Jimmy Butler, in only once since he left Chicago, when he's played back in Chicago, has he not shot 10 free throws. So go over on 5.5 free throws made for Jimmy tonight. I think Miami can get this one, honestly. They've won 10 of 13 against the Bulls recently. They're 6-1 in their last 7 in the United Center. So I'm leaning into those trends, and I think that they can get this one. So I'll take the Heat.
Brady?
Yeah, I'll say I think this feels like the Kyle Lowry game. Like this feels like where he kind of bounces back shooting wise. And the reason is that this feels like a game where they know that Jimmy gets to the line. Like there's no doubt about that. And I feel like this is a game where Jimmy starts getting to the rim early. Lonzo probably starts dipping off and trying to, double him on the drive. And this is going to lead to a bunch of driving kicks to Kyle Lowry. He just has to make them. Like he's had wide open shots this entire time. And I don't think many are worried. I think we're seeing it more recently that people are worrying about it a little more than they did because Duncan was getting all the heat. But you don't worry about Kyle Lowry making shots. Like we're at the 20-game mark. You don't need to worry about that. But it just feels like this is the one where he kind of gets going. He has open looks. He knocks them down. And especially without Tyler, you're going to need him to step up scoring wise. I think the Heat win in a close one.
Yeah, short answer.
Good mention there. I don't know who said the comment, but go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead,
short
Ricky,
answer.
and I'll get to the comment after.
Yeah, short answer. They're doing okay. A little bit better than last season, but whatever. I mean, nice troll attempt, I guess. I think the Heat should pull this one out because at this point, they're supposed to be better than the Bulls. I'm hoping for a strong bench and collective effort from this team. I'm going to assume that Jimmy and DeMar are going to cancel each other out, which I don't think is an unfair prediction to make. But if Tyler Hero plays, if PJ Tucker's able to hit maybe 3-4 threes, if Duncan's able to continue what he started in the fourth quarter against Minnesota, the Heat should be just fine heading into the fourth quarter and beyond. I think the Heat win this, but it won't be as easy as one might think, even with the thin bench of Chicago.
I don't know who came in with this comment, but I like the idea of Caleb Martin guarding Levine a little bit. That I think is something that we could see. I think his athleticism will be helpful. I'm I'm taking the Heat tonight, but I think this is a nip and tuck game. If they're going to win this game, they got to execute down the stretch. And I have a feeling, a bad feeling, that we may talk after this game about how they didn't again. It's funny that when you guys mentioned Kyle Lowry, I didn't even think of him, which kind of tells you where I'm at with him lately. We need to see Kyle show up in games like this. This is what he's here for. He's here for these games against where he's the more experienced point guard against a quality opponent. Like, this is what they're paying him for. And obviously, they're paying him more for April, May, and June. They're paying him, though, to make some shots tonight. Okay, I want to see Kyle go 3 for 7 from 3, maybe. Can he be that aggressive?
It's a love fest at half court with DeRozan.
Duncan Robinson, and I just stood up. Well, I'm sure it is. No, they all love him, and no question about it. And obviously, I understand the relate. But look, Kyle needs to be better. I don't think we're going to start to have a Kyle Lowry conversation here if he doesn't show up more consistently in some of these games, particularly down the stretch when he's supposed to be the guy settling them, not the one who's kind of going haywire on the officials. Like, he needs to be better. The other thing is, people did mention it. Michigan won today. Can Duncan get 4 or 5 threes to celebrate? We'll see. I'm not sure, but I'm honestly right now, like, I've shifted my attention from Duncan to Kyle. Like, one of us making 18, one of us making 30. Okay, has got 2 more years on that deal. He needs to be better. All right, thanks to Sean, thanks to Greg, thanks to Brady, thanks to Ricky. Again, PrizePicks.com. Use that code 5. Thanks to our sponsors, Biscayne Bay Brewing, and also MarkBrownPA.com. Post up 5R after the game. Big pod tomorrow night. Mega pod on 5 on the floor. We're going to have 5 of us in there at one point or another, and we're going to discuss where they are after 20 games. Have a good night.
Paces and Spaces halftime.